who have cared for these lands since time immemorial. Whether you're working in the beauty industry or high tech, the prospect of beginning to export your product or service overseas can feel overwhelming. But with the right advice and support, it doesn't have to be. The benefits of exporting are innumerable, with access to international markets opening doors to networks of peers, new markets and diversified consumer bases, the development of new product and service ideas, and access to diversity and talent on a global scale, just to name a few. Canada's relatively small domestic market, many entrepreneurs need to tap into global markets in order to grow their business. Unlocking the export potential of women entrepreneurs doesn't just benefit individual firms, but the economy as a whole, now more than ever. Women are part of the Canadian economy's recovery, and a 10% increase in women-owned SMEs could add almost $200 billion to GDP. For this webinar, the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, together with our partners at EDC and BDC, have assembled a panel of women entrepreneurs from various industries to share their firsthand experience with exporting their products and services and how it helped them grow their respective businesses. After the panel discussion, we'll hear research highlights from the co-authors of our just-released Grow Global report, and our partners will share resources and support available to help you take those crucial first steps. But first, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Wendy Sukier, founder and academic director of the Diversity Institute, and leader of the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, who will share some benefits and barriers to exporting for women entrepreneurs and why exporting is a key driver for post-pandemic economic recovery. Wendy, to you.
Thanks so much, Megan. I just am going to share my screen and make a few opening remarks. Thanks to everybody for joining us today, and especially our authors and our panelists and our hosts. I just want to set the stage for the discussion with a few highlights from the work that WEKH is doing to talk about women entrepreneurs in the ecosystem and why really exporting is important and what we need to do to increase the participation of women as exporters. So a few things about the structure of entrepreneurship in Canada that are really important. Women are more likely to own micro businesses. They're more likely to be in the services industries and information and cultural industries, in accommodation and food services industries. And we also see that women entrepreneurs in Canada are highly diverse. And in fact, in some populations, including Indigenous people, the rate of entrepreneurship among women is higher than in the general population. One of the things that is, from my perspective, really good news is that we are seeing women narrow the gap with men in terms of exporting. The bad news is that overall Canadian small businesses and entrepreneurs export less than we would like to see them export. But the fact of the matter is that the proportion of women entrepreneurs exporting has doubled since 2011, and the gap between men and women has considerably narrowed. That's really good news. There are some structural differences, as I mentioned, that act as impediments to women exporting and, in fact, accessing many of the resources that are available. One is the structure. Not only are women-owned businesses or women-owned ventures likely to be smaller than average, but they're also less likely to be incorporated, and we'll talk more about that later. As I said, women are more likely to be concentrated in industries which are less likely to export. Think about it. If you're in, you're running a restaurant in food services, for example, going global with that is not an easy feat, although we have seen it with restaurants like Paramount, for example. Women-owned businesses tend to be newer and underfinanced relative to those owned by men. But the really good news is women, especially during COVID, have increasingly pivoted to e-commerce. And we know that e-commerce is a bit of a leveler. I often say that, you know, when you say name a few entrepreneurs, people will typically come up with Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, for example. Kylie Jenner became a billionaire at the age of 20 using Canada's e-commerce platform, Shopify. And one of the really important things about this transition to digital services is, of course, once you go digital, the difference between a Canadian market and a global market almost disappears. The other thing I mentioned before is an intersectional lens is really important. We know that immigrants broadly and immigrant women in particular are well positioned to tap into global markets because of their in-depth understanding of what some of the issues are. And in Canada, we have a massive opportunity to harness those diasporas to really build connections. I'm speaking tomorrow at a Friends of Africa conference. Africa is one of the fastest growing markets in the world, and we should be leveraging the knowledge and skills of, for example, African women entrepreneurs to help build those bridges. One of the challenges I think that we face is we really have to build this understanding that that exporting is tied to growth and to economic prosperity for Canada, and we really have to encourage both men and women to set their sights higher rather than focusing on just local markets. We do know, and you'll hear more about this from the great research that Claire and Janice have done. You'll hear more about some of the barriers that women face, and also in some instances, both men and women are not aware of trade agreements and the opportunities that those provide, or the very many supports that are available if you want to export. The underfinancing of women is an issue across sectors, and of course we know that the confidence gap also plays a role. I would argue that some of the barriers to women entrepreneurs have really been compounded by the impact of COVID-19. While it's created some opportunities in the transition to digital, there's no question that in addition to the barriers that we've seen before, which are the stereotypes and the underfinancing of women entrepreneurs, that with COVID, micro businesses have been hardest hit. And as I mentioned at the outset, women are more likely to own micro businesses. We know that there's a difference between the experience of women-owned businesses versus men-owned businesses in terms of the impact of COVID on revenue. And some of this, frankly, is due to the crushing burden of unpaid work. And it's very encouraging to me to see people like the president of the and CEO of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce standing up and saying, childcare is not a women's issue. It's an economic issue, because we run a risk that women are going to be set back 3 decades if we don't address some of those systemic barriers. And so we need to recognize in this particular time that women are facing more barriers generally than men if they run businesses. At the same time, we want to really underscore the fact that export has to be a key part of our recovery, that we do have a great opportunity to expand business. And this can have, as Megan mentioned, contribute a big bump to our overall GDP. But you'll hear more about some of the barriers, and I won't go into these in detail because people will talk about the broader research on this. But suffice it to say that some of these barriers can be addressed. And you know, one of the intentions of this webinar is trying to raise awareness of the opportunities around exporting and help guide women to the supports that are available in terms of in terms of financial supports, as well as mentoring, research, and other kinds of advice. We do know that there is a big issue, and Megan was working with the rest of the team recently, for example, on a webinar talking about incorporation. We've got a whole series of sessions focused on, with different partners focused on financing. Not only do women face barriers in accessing financing, but they are less likely than men to try to get financing. And this notion of discouraged borrowers, that a lot of women expect that no one will invest in them or lend them money, is something we really have to crack, because there's no question, if you want to grow your business, much better to do it with someone else's money than to finance it on your credit cards. And we do see, and you're going to hear more about today on the panel, we do see some really significant successes in exports. Again, Janice and Claire are going to talk more about the supports that are needed, so I won't go into this in more detail, other than to say there are lots of supports out there. Part of the issue is accessing them, knowing where to go. Part of the issue in some instances is women-led businesses may not qualify for some of the supports available, and that's part of the reason we want to ensure that people understand things like the benefits of incorporation, that people understand that digitization can actually open up massive new opportunities for you. So WEKH is doing a number of things to try to support women through this trying time and to try to advance women's entrepreneurship. And again, lots of information about some of these services, including our new Ask Give online platform, which Megan runs. We will send follow-up information on all of this after the session. And I just wanted to end by saying we really, really appreciate the support of all of the organizations who've helped make this possible. Thank you so much, and looking forward to the discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Wendy, for your insightful thoughts and comments. My name is Jennifer Cook, and I'm the corporate lead for Women in Trade for Export Development Canada. And I'm joined today by my partner and colleague, Laura Didick, the Vice President and lead for Women Entrepreneurs at the Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC. We'd like to welcome you all and thank you for participating this morning in an exciting and important conversation. We're going to start with a conversation with three exceptional women entrepreneurs who have been successfully exporting. So I'm going to start with an introduction and short biographies of each of them so that you get to know who we're going to be speaking with this morning, and then we'll get started with the panel. So first off, I'd like to introduce Shamira Jaffer, a successful innovator and international businesswoman. Shamira is the founder and CEO of Signify Solutions, a company which she has built a diverse team that is pushing the boundaries of automated retail, taking retail technology to the future with her visionary view of the use of robotics, automation, and experiential design. Next, we have Evelyn Niero, who is the founder and CEO of Ellie Bianca, a socially conscious innovator and the driving force behind her luxurious all-natural skincare line. Evelyn is no novice to the business world. She's in fact a serial entrepreneur, and Ellie Bianca, inspired by her daughter, its namesake, is the most recent of 5 companies that Evelyn has created and nurtured to success. Through Ellie Bianca, she has not only created a skincare line, but also a pro-women's empowerment venture designed to heal not just the skin, but the soul. And our third panelist today is Casey Goundiam, the CEO of Red Dot Digital, a digital strategy and management consulting firm with a forward-thinking, data-driven approach. And she's also the founder and CEO of B2B Match, a membership-based business matchmaking platform, which she launched in 2020, where SMEs can connect in order to outsource, scale, network, and find clients. With 20 years of international integrated campaign and project management experience, Casey has managed digital and social media for both Deloitte and Ford. Impressive entrepreneurs, all three of you. So thank you all for being with us and welcome. Before we get started, I just want to remind all the participants who have joined us today that we will hopefully be having some opportunity for a question and answer period at the very end. And so please do start entering your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my co-moderator, Laura.
Thank you, Jen. Good morning, everybody. And I usually have to say good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are in the country, but I think I can safely say good morning. I think it is morning for all of us. And especially good morning for those in BC, where it's especially early. So hopefully you have a cup of coffee, and thank you for phoning in so early. So I want to start with a question. One of the reasons why I love my job so much is I get to meet women entrepreneurs all across the country, and I get to hear about their journeys, and every journey is different. So what I'm interested in hearing from all of our panelists today is your export journey. I want to hear what the journey was and what the impact exporting has had on your business. So Casey, I think we'll start with you. Oh, you're on mute, Casey.
I thought I had unmuted myself. Sorry about that. So thank you very much. I just want to start by saying that I do run two businesses. I network. I do a lot of pro bono work. I'm kind of a business activist. I'm also multilingual, multinational. I lived in and studied in multiple countries. So for me, international was something that made sense from the beginning. In 2015, I decided to leave corporate and founded Red Dot Digital, a digital strategy and management consulting firm. So I saw that there was a question in the Q&A addressed, specifically about services, and I know all about exporting services. So at Red Dot, we support companies as they undertake digital transformation, which is at the time, 5 years ago, it was even more of a, exotic word that a lot of people didn't understand. What I've decided to do very early on is build what I call now a COVID adapted business. So 3 months into my business, I started to export. So earlier this year, I've launched another platform, and that platform is the result of my 5 year of experience being a service business and helping other services businesses exporting around the world. And B2B Match is a business matchmaking platform designed specifically for SMEs. So it's kind of online dating, but for businesses. And I like to do that analogy because it does make sense. You have to have an awesome profile on the platform. You also have to build engagement. So it's a long-term thing. I'm not responsible for the marriage of companies, but I'm definitely going to be invited when there's a wedding. To answer your question is, I've seen in the trenches what exporting means. I've seen in the trenches, being told that, oh, you have a service company is kind of a difficult thing. You're not tangible. So I kind of got so many no's. I've gone through so many red tapes. So I understand what it means to export internationally and even somehow sell locally as well, your services.
So was your export, when you started to export, would you say it was intentional, or did you kind of get into it by accident?
No, it was what I call strategic intuition. Very early on, I saw that what I was selling on the Canadian market. So although I came from Canada and what I was selling was amazing and I came with a lot of credentials, Canada was not necessarily a market that was ready for what I was selling. And I had to basically take the good image of Canada and sell it outside, which is, funnily enough, 3 years into my journey, my portfolio was 75% outside of Canada, 25% of clients in Canada. And after that, so once I had success outside, I got success in Canada. So that's a little bit what my journey was.
Excellent. So Evelyn, I'm interested in hearing from you because that's a service-based business and you are a product-based business. So tell us about your export journey and the impact it has had on your business.
Okay. So actually, prior to starting Ellie Bianca, I did work all over the world, providing environmental engineering solutions. So it was automatic for me when I started Ellie Bianca. I knew it from my planning that, Canada was not big enough. And Canada, it was just actually a starting point. But really where I was going to make an impact was to take Ellie Bianca outside of Canada. Are there challenges? Yes. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Yeah.
And so your export, you intentionally started to export. You went into business knowing that Canadian market was not going to be big enough for you, so you went in with a strategic plan to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. We sat down, thanks to BDC, worked through a plan that really did an in-depth market analysis to understand, who is going to want Ellie Bianca? What are the perceptions, especially our products are oil-based? Who is going to embrace oils? Who is going to embrace, there's also the fact that I'm an immigrant, right? How is that going to play in place? Where that acceptability, where is it going to be? Looking into the Americans are saying, let's buy America first. Is America market for me? Maybe, maybe not. So who is that country that is going to embrace what we're bringing? And I was very, very intentional. There's a few things that have happened along the way that are accidental, but really I knew from the beginning that I had to go outside of Canada.
Good, excellent, excellent. Thank you. And Shamira, tell us about your journey and was it intentional and the impact that it has had? Oh, you're on mute.
I think it's very interesting that both speakers said that right from the get-go they knew they were going to do this. I would say the same thing for me. I was born in East Africa. I lived in Europe for a bit, and then my family came to Canada when I was 13. So I'm really Canadian, but I just always thought globally. I just never had to think about it. I always thought big. I always thought globally. That's easier, and Canada, it's interesting. It's 15 years in business, and this is the first year that we have probably 30% Canadian sales, but generally it's maybe 5% Canadian, 95% export.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a lot of our business originally was just US. US was very natural, US and Canada, but Canada we found. US was an easy sell, but when we think about export, really we wanted to export to Europe, to Dubai, to other countries, and we finally achieved that in the last few years.
Thank you. Excellent. Jen, over to you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to hear each of your stories and some of the themes coming through, which I think are really key. Yes, definitely services can be exported. And Casey, I know in my day-to-day and speaking with women entrepreneurs often, I see it all the time. Women are often exporting and they don't even know it, especially when they sell services. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'd like to go next to ask each of you maybe what were some of the challenges you faced along the way, with your plans to export, and were there any specific resources that you leveraged that might have been helpful to you along the way? I'm going to start backwards. Shamira, let's continue with you. You started with the US and then moved to other countries. Were there certain barriers that you found were difficult to overcome?
Yeah, lots of barriers. I would say I'm very lucky. I have a CFO that's just been amazing at kind of spearheading this. So that was a big plus. But I'll tell you just an interesting story. About 6 years ago, we started getting emails from a company in Dubai that wanted to buy our equipment. And, they were talking quite big. And our salesperson didn't really bring it over to us because it just, Dubai just seems so far away. And then eventually we almost didn't do anything for 3 months. And then eventually kind of ended up where we reached out, started talking to the person and realized that there were a company like a Best Buy in the US, huge company. And we started working with them, and they really were very serious. And the attitude was really, until we get a deposit, it's not real. We just didn't take it seriously, and it just seemed like a big feat. Our machines are huge, to ship them overseas. So anyways, we pursued it. They sent us a deposit. We knew it was real. And we ended up doing a deal that was almost $2 million. One of the big hurdles was, we were a small company at the time, less than 15 people. And how could we ask them to give us a massive deposit and make them feel safe? And we were able to reach to EDC for the Export Guarantee Program. And then that's really when we started tapping into government and really started getting support. And I think, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, you can't get support from the government. It's difficult. I think it's difficult on both ends until you have a real opportunity. So my philosophy is really go out there, get something, and then when you have something tangible, people will help you. I think I find the government and the different programs, whether EDC or BDC, I find all the different programs, you really are dealing with people that are, in a sense, business people. And they will help figure out how to make it happen. But we did get support, and we did close that deal. And then that was really the beginning of us, taking this to another level. But of course, asking people to send you a deposit, because we can't start work without a deposit, that's a huge hurdle. Trying to focus in on a particular country versus, going after the entire world. We had to narrow down where we were going to focus, and that really helped us a lot. But until we did that, you have all sorts of issues, certifications, shipping, logistics. Can you trust these people overseas? There's no communication. And how do you know they're not going to steal your IP? So yeah, lots of challenges. But I think, again, I really believe that you start with an opportunity and then kind of work through it, learn, get to the next opportunity, and so on.
And so for you, the benefits have outweighed or made it worthwhile, sort of overcoming all those challenges and working your way through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would tell you today, when I look at my competition, and we have a lot of competition in the US, the reason we tend to win really large deals is because we position ourselves that we could do a global delivery. So when you look at someone like HP, when they work with us, they don't have, HP Canada, HP US, HP Europe, they can all buy from us and get one program. And it's the export that really got us to where we are today.
Some really great advice. Thank you for sharing those stories, Shamira. Casey, I'd like to hear about your experience and, some of the challenges that you faced along the way and maybe how you've overcome those in your business.
Absolutely. So Red Dot Digital, the sales cycle was complex because it was largely based on selling a service that, not only a service, but it was also a service that most people didn't understand. So because I understood that very early on, I spent a lot of time building relationships. And this is what I like what Wendy said in her opening remarks is digital is what actually allowed me to build an international business. Because far before I had a business to sell for, I had built a international presence online. So when the time came for me to actually activate those relationships, I didn't have to start from scratch. And this is advice I provide to my clients as well, is don't wait until you need it to start. So I spent a lot of time, overseas. At one point I was paying 8 membership to business groups and Chamber of Commerces to network overseas. Did I get any ROI? No, it wasn't the ROI expected. What I had, however, was a lot of contacts. And I'm good at networking. I'm very good with business development. And for me, I don't sell. I build relationships. And this is how I sell, basically. So in 2016, I started to travel back in the UK, in France, both for clients and affiliations. I built relationship. I spent a lot of time with other SMEs in other countries. And what I found out is the common denominator is true in most westernized countries, SMEs are the backbone of the economy. We're 99% of most economies, but we're not served. So that's why I created my second company, which is the business matchmaking platform. We now have over 15 companies on that platform, represented from Brazil to Canada to US and the UK and Dubai and everywhere. And we continue to grow. And I wanted to empower SMEs to do the same as I did. Was there challenges? Huge challenges, and I can name them. Funding. I invested a lot. I keep telling my peers, do not try to do what is not your core by yourself. You focus on what you're good at and invest and hire other people to do what you're not good at. Digital has been sold largely as something that kids can do and something that is easy to do. But once you actually understand how digital can take you from being a very good business to a very successful business, you'll see why you need a professional and you cannot do it yourself. Networking on the ground is massive. People still, well, COVID has changed things, but even then, I firmly believe that we need to see each other. So invest in traveling. And, Can Export is a great program for that. So shout out to the Trade Commission. Also mingle and connect with people who are like-minded. OWIT is a super awesome, organization here in Toronto, and there's a lot of other women, exporters at different stages of their journey. So, the challenges are there, but is it worth it? I would do it 10 times over if I had to.
Thank you so much, Casey. That's really, really inspiring. I love what you say, that you don't sell, you build relationships. And I think that's a commonality with women entrepreneurs generally. So, Evelyn, you've got a different experience. You've had multiple businesses. What would you say were maybe some of your biggest challenges and, the supports that helped you to sort of overcome some of them?
Yeah, this is a totally different industry. Well, for me, selling services was so much easier. I could go to Kenya and drill a well, or go to Chad and build a pipeline. I'm hired, I have the service, I'm already paid to do the work prior to taking off. Well, Eli Bianca came with its own challenges. Financing for sure, because now I have to put out funding up front. And, I have to put up my hand first. It took me a long time to learn that let me use somebody else's money to advance the business. I was just like, I want to do this debt-free. I want to build $1 billion skincare brand without taking any money. That was kind of my attitude going in. It had to change quickly. The other thing is the regulatory. While I knew that I needed to get some permits, you need to get your product approved in those countries where you're going to, you have no clue where to start, right? Again, thanks to the global affairs, I always go to the Trade Commission office and just say, where do I start? They're my friend for that. So challenges around getting approvals in various countries, making sure that you're getting a trademark, because usually you just think, hey, I'm ready, I have my product, and I just sell it. You'll be shocked, how many Eli Biancas are registered in China. Because as soon as someone sees there's an interest of you wanting to go there, they just take it on so that, now you can go into battle with them. So making sure you're prepared on the regulatory aspect, that was a big deal, that time consuming as well. Language and culture, how other countries do business, how deals are negotiated. You think you've signed a contract. I worked with a company where I thought we had signed a contract, everything is done. I go to meet them face to face. It's like you're starting negotiations again. And you think you finish this meeting, there's another meeting in the afternoon to discuss the same thing. You're like, what's going on here? So understand culture and understanding how these various countries do business. Definitely, it's a marriage. And you don't want to go to bed with everyone that puts their hand up that they love your product. So that was a challenge of trying to really, do that due diligence of, and we continue to do that, who do we really want to represent our brand? Because especially if you are in sales, like in products like we are, you can easily be put out of business. So understanding that those pieces and really checking on who you want to partner with, it's a challenge. It continues to be a challenge, but again, I love the Trade Commission for that, because they can do those checks for you, and I always utilize them as much as possible. What else? I mean, it's and of course just the fear that comes with, am I ready? The risk, I'm taking this risk. Am I really ready to do this? Both mentally and, at the bit and financially and everything that supports the success. And then of course, how are you going to support those partners from here, especially right now that we're not able to travel? So really figure and embracing technology so that we can actually make sure that we're doing it. Of course, we women, we're again in that space where we don't in place. It's a challenge constantly. We always just want to push it off. So embracing technology, but then looking and saying, how do we turn technology not to be transactional, but be that relationship based? Because sometimes when it feels like it's more transactional online as opposed to building that relationship. So there's a gap there that we have to close, and how do we build those relationships again online now that the travel is limited.
So many great nuggets of information in there from all three of you. And what I'm hearing a lot of is, you've got to push yourself beyond your boundaries, whether it's mindsets about taking on a loan to be able to reach your objectives more quickly, or adopting technology. And Shamira mentioned, surrounding yourself with a strong team, and Casey even said, don't do things that you're not strong at, but hire experts to help you in those areas that aren't your strengths, so that you can focus on the strength of your business. I think there's some really great insights in there that our audience is picking up on today. All three of you did mention funding and being able to access funding. And I think it's important for women entrepreneurs to know that, yes, it might be challenging, but it's worth exploring different programs, and there's many out there. We mentioned the Can Export program, which is actually very flexible and can help companies, as well as the resources available at BDC and EDC that can help you grow through your export plan. So thank you for mentioning those. I'm going to pass it off to Laura, I think, for our final question of the panel.
Yeah, thanks. So great advice. And the next question was on what advice would you have, but I'm going to change it a little bit because I'm interested. I've heard, so as Jen mentioned, the Trade Commissioner Office, Can Export, focus on what you're good at. I think Shamira said, just go for it, use other people's money. There's so many good nuggets, and embracing technology. Evelyn, I want to start with you because that really resonated with me. And all of you spoke a lot about the importance of building relationships and going, and I think Casey, you said, face to face, and I knew Evelyn that you've gone overseas a lot. So, I guess, has your advice changed post pandemic, or I don't want to say post, I say during, I guess, because we're not post yet. And given the fact that we can't travel, and that relationship building is not, it is face-to-face, I guess, over a screen. And now you've got language, you've got, different time zones. I can't even imagine, because I'm dealing just even across Canada, and that's challenging. I can't imagine going overseas with time zones. Evelyn, how are you using technologies to still build those relationships and in the business development?
For example, with our suppliers in China, I guess what I'm headed at is you have to be flexible. Flexibility is the key. So, for example, our suppliers in China, they love to work with WeChat and WhatsApp. When you send them an email, you might never get an answer. So you have to be quick to be texting them on WeChat, texting them on WhatsApp, and don't be like, hey, this is not what is, a form mode of communication as we know it. So you've got to be flexible. You have to be able to, sometimes I'm up at 3 a.m. or 12 p.m. to have those conference calls. You have to meet them at the point of need, and be able to communicate with what is normal for them.
Okay. Any other, you've given a lot of advice, so thank you for that. And technology is important. And Wendy mentioned that, part of technology and e-commerce has allowed, that's the one good thing that's come out of it, is I guess it's leveled the playing field a little bit. So what is the, if you could summarize your advice to a women entrepreneur who are, kind of thinking about exporting, doesn't necessarily have someone that's interested yet, what would be sort of in, your two top pieces of advice for them?
I would say, one, do a lot of research. There's a lot of information online. There's a lot of information provided by the Trade Commission. They can do market research for you for free. So get that information, understand your market really, really well before you start heading over there. Advice number two, I would say, is tap into the grants. I got into it so much later. Like the provincial government, for example, here in Alberta has a program, several programs, where they will go with you overseas. They've already have pre-planned meeting. I mean, those have been my most valuable missions that I've taken, where I've actually been able to close deals, but have relationships. I mean, trustworthy relationships that I can always reach out to. So don't be afraid to tap into those. I mean, they pay for 50% of your expenses. If you can get on, jump on. And right now, there's a lot of online meetings that are being held. Again, they're continuing on those missions. So I would say, take advantage of what is already available before you dump in a lot of money, like I did. And then 3 years down the road, I'm like, oh, this was, they're easy and quick to do. Just jump into it.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, KC, I'm interested. So a woman that's interested in exporting, is thinking about it, does not have the ability to go overseas or to the US to do those face-to-face and business development, knock on someone's door. What's your piece of advice? How do they dive into it?
I want to take the time to unpack that a little bit, because at being in service, I saw it maybe differently. So for me, expansion and growth really relied heavily on cultural understanding. It also relied on language, and also understand on how to build a network. Now you can do it online. And the difference is everyone is open to it. When I started 5 years ago, I used to say to people, I'm going to be in the UK in 5 weeks. Would you like to meet? They would answer back saying, when you're on the ground, email me. Now it's completely different, right? So I think we have to take advantage to that. So the pieces of advice, shout out to Can Export, shout out to all the support organizations. I think there's a lot of goodwill. You will get a lot of no's because people would not necessarily understand your service right away. But you have to push doors. You have to continue. You have to believe in what you do. You have to come back. If somebody tells you no, you say, okay, great. That's the beginning of the conversation. What shall I change to make you help me? At the end of the day, when I started with the tech, the trade commissioner, I got a no. They didn't want to, I wasn't a product that was ready for them. And then the rules changed. Thankfully now it's a lot more flexible. I have an amazing team. Evelyn, I go to them everywhere I want to go. I go to them, and they open doors to me. They give advice, and that's great. And I don't want to, I want to plug two organizations. OWIT, which is really the only organization I know for women and exporters. So reach out to them and check out what they do. And the third advice, which is a shameless plug for my platform. Literally, what my platform does is facilitate and do the heavy lifting for exporting. So if you go there, you sign up, it's free. and you can, you fill up a profile, and the magic is there.
Did you do any of the trade missions that the trade commission?
I did.
You did. Okay. And
I did 2 trade missions, one in France, and I'm in tech, so I'm in an even more niche, right? So I was at the aerospace trade mission, and I did another trade mission in the UK as well.
So would you recommend the trade missions? I guess now they're virtual, but would you recommend them?
Oh, absolutely. They are, at least you can build relationships. It's all about that first contact. It's all about getting that first conversation, and then it's up to you. Okay. But definitely, any opportunity to network is great. And I know I used to go into countries where I knew no one, literally no one. I would go into events and I knew nobody. And you have to put yourself out there and be okay with not knowing anyone and building it slowly, and reach out to other people. I think we're all goodwill people here. If you reach out to us and ask advice, we can definitely help you.
Community is so important, and
yes.
You see it really resonates, and Evelyn said it too, is that fear, right? Like fear is normal and it's okay, and you need to kind of just go for it. So Shamir, what's your advice? Is it different pre-pandemic and during and post-pandemic, I guess?
Yeah, I think I'm in a very lucky position. I really do think that there is a little bit of everybody wanting to do business in their own countries. Which is why I'm seeing more Canadian business than ever before. So we were very lucky in that in the last year and a half. And it was just, I don't know if it's fluke or luck or just hard work, but over time, we met a gentleman, for instance, in France that loved our product, and we kept communicating. Well, now he's kind of started a startup using our products in France. We've got a similar thing in Germany and in the Nordics. And so what's been really great with the pandemic for us is that they are now doing local business with our product. And we're doing a lot more Canadian business here as well. So I think that's been a plus. I think at the end of the day, we have to remember that the French ideally want you to speak French to them, want you to understand their culture, want you to be awake when they're awake. So I think having, slowly building that, and it's taken us a long time, but kind of getting to the point where you have some local representation is really critical. And I would say that today I felt years ago that it's okay to do it all from Canada. It was working for us. Yes, we did the meetings, we did all of that. But now my mind is kind of moving more towards, you need to get to some point, whether it's a reseller, a partner, whatever it is, to get into that, to get some local representation. I will tell you, Canada has an amazing reputation. We go into competition with American companies, and I know we have an edge because we're Canadian. So that's a really, really big plus. And I find that even though Europeans are international, they tend to also, like, there's a big difference when a German company is coming in and competing with us, maybe for business in the UK. Canada is still seen very, very positively, even in that scenario. So I think that's been a big advantage. We've definitely received a lot of help. Very, very proud to be Canadian, and with all the support that we've received, from BDC, EDC. We went to a trade mission in Dubai, and that was amazing. So now doing it remotely, I think now that we've got something established, even at a low level, doing everything remotely and on Zoom, etc. It's it works really well. I agree with the comment I think Evelyn made about WhatsApp and WeChat. I think you have to be prepared to stay up late at night. For Dubai, I used to be up every morning at 3 a.m. It messed up my sleep patterns for a while, but you have to be there when they're awake, right? You've got to kind of be flexible. So I would say, honestly, if I were to tell somebody, I think it's a mistake not to think of export. I think it's a big mistake. I think you've got to go into any business always thinking of export. And I think you've got to, we've got so many great programs. So when we were in France, for instance, we went and met the trade commissioners. They weren't able to help us in terms of helping us start business, but they were able to caution us about employment standards, what we had to do. They introduced us to people. And then just one last comment. LinkedIn is a great platform also. And I think when you receive, if somebody refers you to somebody in a country, somehow you've kind of stepped in at a different level. And I think that's, trying to get those referrals and trying to get somebody who knows somebody to introduce you to somebody is actually it's worth putting the effort and that just in that type of networking.
Excellent, excellent advice. And I have to say, you're the first person I've heard, and I love it, that uses great and pandemic in the same sentence. So the fact that you've been able to find opportunities, and that's the great thing about women entrepreneurs is, as Wendy said in her intro, that women entrepreneurs especially have found a way to pivot and grow and survive and thrive, which I think is great. So thank you so much. We're going to have some time for some Q&A at the conclusion, but I want to turn it over now to the, I guess we'll call it the experts and the authors of our report. And we're going to have a few questions for them because Claire and Janice traveled across the whole country while doing this research and in writing the report and talked to many women like Evelyn, Casey, and Shamira. So I'm going to introduce them and I'm going to pass it back to Jen and Claire Becton. Claire Becton is the founder at Own Your Success and executive in residence at Carleton University's Center for Research on Inclusion at Work. Among many impressive achievements, Claire has authored many works and is a sought-after speaker, mentor, coach, consultant, and facilitator. She is an advocate for the advancement on women's leadership and for diversity and inclusion. And Janice Mcdonald is the founder of the Beacon Agency. Janice knows that small hinges swing big doors. As a global champion for women, she is pushing for equity. She has been pushing for equity since 1992, when she completed her first graduate degree and wrote her thesis on women on boards in Canada. Janice is an award-winning entrepreneur, a four-time WXN Top 100 winner, and a 2016 WXN Hall of Fame inductee, a sought-after speaker and co-author of 3 groundbreaking studies on women entrepreneurs in Canada, released in 2016 and 18, and now this one in 2020. So her 2020 book, Fearless Girls with Dreams, Women with Vision, is a Canadian national bestseller, and her popular and influential Fearless Women podcast is currently in its 2nd season. Now, both Claire and Janice have way more in their bios, but we didn't have time to read them all. So I encourage you to read the report or to go on their websites and you can hear, because their accomplishments is unbelievable and everything they've done. I continue to bump into them in all the work we do. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who's going to open up the panel with Claire and Janice. Welcome.
Fantastic, thank you, and wonderful to have you here this morning with us, Janice and Claire, and thank you for this great work that's being released today with this new research report. So kicking it off with the first question, after listening to these 3 successful women exporting entrepreneurs speak about their export journey this morning, I want to hear from you. Do their stories resonate with what you heard as you traveled across Canada and met with many women entrepreneurs?
Thank you, Jen, for that question. And thank you, Evelyn and Casey and Shamira, for your wonderful stories, because what you spoke about is tremendous advice. And you also highlighted the importance of international experience. And when we went across the country and were talking to women, this was one of the struggles that some of them had in getting into export, was finding out about those markets, understanding those markets, and as you said, about the culture. But certainly it resonated that you had intentionality, that you had planned, that you had thought through, and that many times you had sought support and had networks. And I'll let Janice, because we agreed to share these.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. I think today on the panel, we have really the gold standard in women entrepreneurs exporting: deep knowledge, serious intention, and a commitment, and that export plan as well. So I think their stories are fantastic. There was some mention of some of, some of the challenges, whether it's adapting and flexibility. We heard that. Some of the, not everybody has as powerful of a story as the three shared here. We heard the word fear used. Some people did have some fear considering this idea of going global and not really understanding like, where do I start? Where do I turn, and who can help? I think one of the other word that's really important and I think practical for everybody listening is this idea of network. And if we look at now more than ever, networking and having a network, a strong network, is invaluable to anybody considering export and also continuing to expand their export footprint.
Excellent, thank you, Janice. So, was there, as you traveled across the country and talked, is there a winning formula or a secret sauce, I guess, that you heard that for women that want to get into exporting? Is there some secret that everyone needs to know? What would be it?
I don't know if there was a universal secret, but I think some of the things that has already been outlined by these amazing women is having the knowledge and having some experience was very valuable. Having a plan, really understanding the markets and what are the opportunities out there. Having courage, as we heard from these women mentioned, that you need that courage. And what we heard so many times, Janice and I, is the importance, as she has said, of networks, of being networked, because many of the women that were struggling did not have the networks. And we heard time and time again from women, it was my network. I could pick up the phone and call someone and they would be able to give me the advice that we were seeking.
And I'll add as well, I think part of that secret sauce for certain, as Claire highlighted, network, absolutely, but also asking for the help you need. And we heard a great example this morning around the idea of, it was Casey, I believe, who said the first time she went to her trade commissioner service, there was misalignment and she got a no. But that didn't stop her. She didn't say, well, that's it, export's over for me. She doubled down and got even more intentional. And we heard another example of being really well informed about, export isn't you're literally taking on the whole world. You're going to figure out where is my best, first step or that shot that I want to take. I think it was you, Samira, that said, you got really clear about which location to consider. You can't take it all on. And we do know that there's challenges in terms of finances. So, you do have to have a good sense of what it's going to cost, which again is why an export plan is so important.
That's really important what you said, Janice, because going global does not mean literally global necessarily.
Right. Not every country all at once.
Starting with maybe one country or one region and then they're expanding out from there. Excellent. Dan, over to you.
Awesome. No, these are really great insights, and I love hearing the stories, because I think that's where all the learnings are come from. So, in that vein, Janice and Claire, I'd like to hear, because at Export Development Canada, we really want to inspire as many women entrepreneurs as possible to think about new markets. And so, when you were speaking to women that weren't yet exporting, can you tell us a little bit about what they felt was maybe holding them back, or, what were some of the reasons they weren't yet exporting?
I think one of the things that we heard for those that hadn't made the step or were uncertain about taking that step was where to begin. And this may be surprising to, we've got such a great community on the call here today, but there's so much information is relevant, it's helpful, and there's so much great work being done in this space. But if you aren't as well connected and you aren't as well networked, you may not know where to go, or you may be spending too much time chasing things that aren't relevant to you. And so I think again, asking for help and being connected is going to make a really big difference. I have other thoughts, but Claire?
Well, we heard so many stories of women who were struggling and who talked about the complication and the black hole that when you were facing export. And as Janice said, there's so much information out there, but some of it is relevant if you're further stage along or if you're earlier stage, finding that. And one of the things that women said so many times is we'd really like to have a human being at the other end of the line that we can speak to, because so many times, like listening to the stories today, we hear how helpful having other women entrepreneurs talk about their success. And having someone, whether it's from BDC or EDC or Trade Commissioner Service, or from any of the other organizations supporting women, really helps to understand what is my specific issue and what do I need to know. Because I'll share one story. Janice and I were talking to someone, for example, who was in the food industry. And we know that food products are much more challenging than some of the other products because of all of the health and safety regulations. And one of them said, I would just love to be able to talk to someone who's been successful recently in doing that. And that is so important.
Yeah, and I'll add maybe a further comment is, so it's the value, of course, of talking to the experts. And we know, for example, the TAP program is great. That kind of gets you actually focused on creating that export business plan. But equally, hearing from other women entrepreneurs is so invaluable. The more we profile, like today, this is incredible because it actually demystifies export. And if you can look at 3 women like we have today who are saying, I'm doing it, and I figured it out, and I got help, and I'm here to help you. There's, so much going on in the chat about people connecting right now, on the webinar. To me, that's really exciting too. Like, we want to see other women that have done it. And that's what we've heard consistently. Women want to know other, not this notion of it can be done, but actually, like we have today, 3 women who said, I've done it and I'm continuing to do it successfully.
Yeah, and it wasn't, and it was challenging.
Yeah.
Recognizing that there were some challenges, like Casey got turned away the first time I phoned the Trade Commissioner office, but I think that people like to hear that, right? I'm not the only one that have had challenges, and this is how I got over it. So it's really invaluable. So thank you. So as a last question, let's finish with recommendations. That's so important, your recommendations. There were a number of recommendations in the report to enhance the ability of women entrepreneurs to engage in export. So what are your recommendations? And I guess, we know, I want to just, another question, a supplemental question to that question, the recommendation is, we know that women have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. All the studies have said it, and Wendy talked about it in the beginning. So, you did this report kind of pre, the interviews in that and finished it after, but are there any additional recommendations or have they changed given the world that we're living in right now?
I think one of the most important things is to recognize that all of the recommendations are equally or even more important today than they were when we made those recommendations. Because as you said, women are struggling. We've heard this many times, and I know Janice and I have both spoken to entrepreneurs who are really struggling, but they're being innovative. And of course, we talked earlier about technology, but I'll start with a few of them and then let Janice carry on as well. But one of them was that women's business centers and the support organizations who are helping women export, if they could train their frontline workers to work more closely with the women entrepreneurs who they know are ready to export or maybe thinking about export. I can give you an example of why that was so important. In one case, one of the women entrepreneurs that we interviewed actually for several of our studies, she was going to major production. She started off with a product, was immensely amazed at how much demand there was for this product, and she was now going into a larger manufacturing facility. But she had a reach out from EDC saying there's a person in a business in California that would like to be able to import your products. So this was really important to her. Although she wasn't ready at that moment, it gave her that information. And I think that we also need to have that information and specialized training for women entrepreneurs, because when BDC did their grow workshops to help women entrepreneurs grow their business, there was tremendous feedback and how that inspired the women to be able to think more globally and have access to those resources. So I think that is really important, that even some of the programs like TAP, which many women entrepreneurs have had, could be more customized for women entrepreneurs, and we heard that as well. So these are a few, and I'll let Janice do it because there's more, of course.
Sure. Well, I'll list one and we can go back and forth. It's important for women entrepreneurs, and this isn't to say it's all on you, because we want changes within the export ecosystem, obviously. But for the women entrepreneurs, it's important to really actually think big and think global. And, that's a exciting, scary idea. But to your point, Laura, in a you know, during pandemic and really as we look forward to a post-pandemic economic recovery, given that women entrepreneurs are so innovative and they have adopted digital, I mean, to me, this is a really exciting time, recognizing nevertheless, and to be clear, as Wendy said right at the outset, this is a particularly difficult time for many women in terms of the pandemic. We can't deny that, that's true. But that having been said, I think it's very exciting for women entrepreneurs to think in that bigger way, and then to look to the remarkable resources that they're abundantly out there, and you know, figure out, talk to your community, get further connected, and now because we are all so comfortable, you know, in this digital world, that you do have this opportunity to strengthen those relationships and to ask for the help that you need. I think we need each other, women entrepreneurs, now more than ever. And so while that's not a direct, you know, recommendation in the study, I think it's relevant given our COVID landscape.
I think we also need, women entrepreneurs also need the government's support with their policies and programs and all the organizations in the ecosystem more than ever. And Wendy outlined that as well, because we heard from the women here today, and we heard from a lot of women about the challenges of getting grants and having those opportunities to get funding, because that's often a challenge for export. And so being able to have WEKH and other organizations that are supported by the government is really important. And it's going to be even more important as we move forward, because we know that a lot of the smaller women entrepreneurs, and we know they're innovative. Janice and I did a report which came out in 2018 about how innovative women entrepreneurs are. And I've seen it, and I know all of you have seen it now. The innovation has been fantastic. I just want to share quickly with you, I'm a lead coach for a program through Invest Ottawa. And one of the women that I've been coaching, they really did a pivot during the pandemic and realized they couldn't sell their product, but they built relationships through giving away a lot of things. And now it's translating into business. So we're seeing this all over the place. And I think that's amazing and really to be encouraged.
I'll add to the value and importance of supplier diversity programs. And, you know, so just highlight that. That's, I think, really important. And it was mentioned earlier, I think it was UKC that mentioned OWIT and other organizations like that, BWIT, you know, the Trade Commissioner Services. I mean, there is so much support. And again, this is not to say it's all on the women entrepreneurs, you know, if you're not connected, it's more through the lens of there is a huge opportunity. The landscape has changed. I think about when, with the previous business that I had when we first started exporting, like many that we talked to, we didn't know about the Trade Commissioner Service at all. It would have saved us a lot of time and money. And so here it is, this remarkable organization dedicated for Canadian and women in business that you can tap into for free. And I think that's so important. And so this isn't a direct recommendation in the report, but I do feel like, you know, we women entrepreneurs are so good at sharing information. And so if we can keep this valuable information being shared, we're going to see a lot of positive outcome in terms of more people understanding what's available. Because we did hear those stories as we went across the country where women will say, I had no idea about fill in the blank, whatever that source may be, but my friend told me and she's having success, and because of it, now I accessed a grant, I went on a trade commission and these kinds. So I think that's also our unique as women and as women entrepreneurs. If we strengthen that network ourselves, it's really powerful. And it's happened to me too, you know, where other women entrepreneurs have highlighted opportunities. So I think if we can continue that, it'll be pretty exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing some of the key highlights of your new research report. I do believe the link is posted in the chat function and will be available on the WEKH website for anybody that's interested in taking a deeper look into the findings of Janice and Claire in this new report. We're going to take some of the questions in the chat now. There's quite a few, and I will start and then go back and forth with Laura. Hopefully we get to answer all of them here. And if not, I think we will be able to follow up, with an email to all the participants, perhaps with some answers to the questions that we don't actually get to. But let's kick it off. There's one question here that sticks out to me, and I'll address this to our entrepreneur panel. I think both Shamira and Evelyn had touched on this a little bit. One of the participants has asked, like, if you come across a new opportunity, I mean, all of you have spoken about the importance of being intentional, exporting intentionally, having a plan to move forward. But sometimes you do, and especially as we, get more digital, we will get some interest coming inward. And so this participant asked a question about if an opportunity comes to you from, a potential customer in a foreign country, what are some of the tactical very first steps as a venture you should take before sort of, advancing with that interest? She mentions that she's in the education sector and is a startup exploring ed tech, and she's had a few opportunities from South America and others in Europe that sound really great, but wants to know what she should do before, openly getting back to them that she's interested in exploring the opportunity. She mentions the lack of legal or tax advice makes her hesitant, but maybe Evelyn, we'll start with you, and then Shamira and Casey can chime in as well. Do you have specific advice that you would say tactically, here's some first things you should do?
So the first thing I would do is, first you have to qualify. Is it a valid lead, or is it just, someone that has found your name on the website and they're reaching out? And there are ways to go around that. So, again, the Trade Commission office is a great starting point to do that quick check for you. The next piece is to really look at and say, who is going to do what? I have found situations where sometimes, someone reaches out from an international community, and they think that, we're a great partner, but they really want you to do all the work. So you really have to know the terms of reference, like create that, understand who's going to be doing what, who's going to be paying for what, and have all that narrowed down once you've made a decision to be moving forward. And there's also lots of resources. There's also tons of international lawyers in terms of the legal framework that you can reach out to. And again, the Trade Commission does a lot of that homework to really, they've already have that information for you that you can tap into. And then lastly, there's, again, tons of international taxation companies that you can work with to figure out how the tax is going to work. And through the TAP program, they bring all those experts to the table and bring those connections for you.
Excellent advice. And just to pick up on, first thing, is it a quality lead? Is it somebody you want to get into business with? And definitely the Trade Commissioner Service helps there. I wanted to just also let people know, since we want to share information here, Export Development Canada has also launched an online tool called Company Insight. Again, a free service that you can go on the EDC website and just type in the name, and we've got a vast database to sort of give some of that initial due diligence on a company. So if anybody's in that position, you should check out that tool and absolutely reach out to the Trade Commissioner Service. Shamira, anything you would add in terms of technical, tactical first steps? You've been in this situation, I believe.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful not to waste time in the wrong places. So, it's a little bit like dating. You want to really get to know the person. You want to see if you can find something that you have in common with them. I really agree with Evelyn. So many people want to work with us, but they want to be a joint venture. But really, we do 90% or 100% of the work, and they benefit. So you have to really start looking at where is the benefit they bring to you. Be really careful and look into their background in terms of, are they a competitor? just fishing for information, or are they really, someone that can really help you get you to the next place? So it has to, truly has to be a win-win. Otherwise, you're wasting time. As sometimes you'll get people that are entrepreneurial that want to resell your product, but just make sure that you think, just you have to really look at the character and see, will they succeed? If you're going to invest in them, do you believe they'll succeed? And then, of course, you've got online is so amazing now. You can get so much information about a person so quickly, and I think that's really important. I'm maybe not as risk adverse as I should be. Maybe, but I tend to not worry about the taxes and the legal and all of that stuff till a lot later. When the business is there and when it's real, that's when I'm going to start spending time on that. Otherwise, you could be spinning your wheels, doing all this work that maybe won't amount to anything, right? So really get to understand that there is an opportunity. Get a little into the opportunity before you start, worrying about, whether it's certifications or legal or all of that.
Super, super advice. Casey, anything you want to add there?
No, I think both panels covered everything.
Awesome. And before I let Laura take one, I do want to pick up on one that's I hear all the time, and it's more for you, Casey, because it's about services. Somebody online has mentioned that she does online coaching or consulting with 8-week programs and wondering, is this an export? And I'm telling you that I see this all the time. Even if you never leave Canada, but through digital means, you are reaching customers that are located outside of Canada. Through your services, you are absolutely an exporter, and you should be leveraging the resources available from the Government of Canada, from the provinces, from your local organizations, because you are absolutely an exporter. So, and there was a question in there. Now I've lost it. All in my excitement about exporting, but it was really about, I think I know what it was. It was about leveraging the brand Canada in selling yourself. And one entrepreneur was saying she feels she doesn't do that enough, but maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. What I've noticed, and I've traveled for business and had clients and opportunities to speak from the US all the way to Turkey and Kuwait. Nobody goes to Kuwait. In Canada, I think in Kuwait, I've met teachers and nurses and doctors. But from a business perspective, I was a novelty. One of the things that I've noticed is when you come into any market, whether it's France, where I go all the time, or the US or the UK or even Kuwait, there's such a love for the Canadian brand. But there's one thing that I have to give an advice is we have a bad reputation in business. In the sense that we are seen as very nice, but we're not seen as very aggressive in business. So the business will go to Americans and Germans and British before people think about us. So we definitely have to push the boundaries. We have to do follow-ups. We have to be a little bit more assertive. I have my friend Peter Hawkins at Mental Hawk, who does a lot of the work, and he talks about the bad boyfriend syndrome that Canada suffers from. And it is really important that we also educate each other. Like I went on a mission, and I remember it was in France. I was ready for the French market. I had my presentation. I knew how the French market worked, but I'm pretty sure a lot of the other people who were in the mission who sold services were not necessarily prepared to take on the French market. You have to do your homework. French people think very differently from Canadian people. And as nice as we are, as much as they love Canada, they will be hard-nosed business people. So we have to take that advantage and piggyback on it.
Thank you. Thanks, Casey. There's tons more questions, and we're not going to be able to get to them because I just looked at the time, and we need to be conscious of everyone's time. So we will be trying to send out the answers to the questions. We're going to send them to all the participants and Janice and Claire, and collectively we're going to come up with answers. And I think Wendy and her team is going to send them in the follow-up email. So thank you so much to all of our panelists, Casey, Evelyn, Shamira, Claire, Janice, super insightful. Janice and Claire, I know it's been a long road with this study, and very excited that it's completed and it's come out. And I encourage everybody, obviously, to take a look at it and to read it and to read the recommendations. And as these entrepreneurs said, just go for it. I mean, just think about it. Anyone can do it. And I know that Evelyn and Casey and Shamir have all said that, you know, if you want to reach out to them, they love paying it forward. And I think in our prep, I think Casey said, you know, I've learned a lot and I'd love to pass those learnings on to other people so they don't have to go through the same hassles that I did. So I think that's really valuable. And that's the power of community and the power of women entrepreneurship. So thank you for that. So I am now going to pass it over to Wendy, who's going to conclude for the day.
Thanks so much. And I have to say this was really inspiring and really exciting. And I'm so grateful. I think, Laura and Jen, you should have a talk show because you really animate and pull the best out of our panelists, Casey, Evelyn, and Shamira. I hung on every minute. I've been writing emails to my staff saying we have to write this up, because I do think that whole notion, and we're working on a project to really try to profile more women's success stories to really crush the stereotype. If you see it, you can be it. And these stories of successful women entrepreneurs who export, the shared knowledge, the insight into what I would call the unspoken rules. You know, that's one of the real challenges many women face in all kinds of environments is often they are not mentored, coached, supported the way men are. And so there are often things that are not apparent. You know, people have talked about there's lots of information, but navigating that information, figuring out what's important at what stage is super important. And I have to say, you know, because I am the head of the Diversity Institute, I have to say as well that one of the things that really struck me from this is the power of leveraging the experience, the expertise, and the advice of women with international experience and sharing that with women who may find the idea of growing global scary. I think there are massive opportunities, not just to take advantage of the BDC and the EDC information and the programs and the grants and the services and supports that FIT and OWIT provide, or the Magnet Export Portal, and so on. But it really, for me, this kind of peer-to-peer advising is invaluable, because talking to someone who's done it is critically important. And all the insights into kind of cross-cultural intelligence and how you really have to understand not just the markets that you're going into, but the styles of communication. And I remember very clearly being on a trade mission to China, and I was really lucky because I took one of my colleagues who's Chinese along, because I did not understand what was going on. You know, I'd go to a meeting and we'd have a conversation, and of course I'd be inclined to go like 1, 2, 3 ABC, where do we sign? And the sense of time, the sense of decorum, I had to ask him afterwards, like, was that a good meeting? Was that a bad meeting? Because I couldn't read the cultural cues. And so having people in your orbit who have done it, who understand international markets, hugely important. And, you know, the AskGive platform is really designed to help build those peer-to-peer connections, because one of the insights Vicki Saunders has shared many times is women don't ask. We're often offering what we're prepared to help other people with, but we often don't stop and say, I really could use some help with this or that. And so I would encourage you all to jump on to the Ask Give platform. The other real lesson, I think, in this discussion, and I may get in trouble for saying this, but is the kind of fearlessness and willingness to try to do something that you don't necessarily know everything about, and you don't necessarily have all the answers. And, you know, there's lots of research that shows that when men have 50% of what they need, whether it's for a job, whether it's to start a business, they'll go for it. Women have to have 90% or 100% or 120% and be coaxed because, you know, we're socialized to be well behaved and not take chances and so on. And so I love some of the comments about people acknowledging that they didn't know everything. They did their homework, they tried to figure it out, but you don't have to have everything perfectly aligned before you can take the plunge. And you know, intelligent risk taking, I think, is something we need to really reinforce as much as we can with women entrepreneurs. And the final thing that I'll say that I thought was really inspiring about this was COVID is horrible. COVID has crushed families. People have lost friends, loved ones, their lives. But the fact is, we do have an opportunity to rebuild better. We do have an opportunity to imagine things that previously were not imaginable. And as people are pivoting and adapting and changing, there is, in my view, a massive opportunity for many people to think about their markets, about their products, about their services, about themselves in ways that perhaps they haven't before. So I really want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to reinforce how grateful we are to Claire and Janice for doing the report and for the support of EDC and BDC. And I have to, of course, acknowledge my entire team who helped work on the report, helped work on the event, helped make sure I was in the right place at the right time. So thanks very much to all of you. As was mentioned, we'll do follow-up. We really welcome your feedback, we really welcome your engagement, and we'll share some of these additional resources. But at the end of the day, you know, the help is really here. And we just need to ask, and we need to build those relationships. So thank you very, very much, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.